everyone, and welcome back to Scary Dark Narrations. Tonight, we're hitting the long, lonely highways of America, where the road never truly sleeps, and neither do the nightmares that haunt it. In this episode, we all dive into 7 of the most disturbing true horror stories ever told by truckers who witnessed things out there that defy all logic. These are not urban legends or campfire tales. These are real accounts from drivers who vanished into the night or barely made it back. From restless spirits that stalk the open road, to voices that whisper through the CB radio long after midnight. From phantom hitchhikers to unmarked rest stops, hiding something unspeakable, every story you'll hear tonight was told by someone who swore they'd never speak of it again. For their safety and privacy, some names and locations have been changed, but the chilling truth behind each encounter remains untouched. So buckle up, keep your eyes on the mirrors, and whatever you do, don't pull over when you hear someone calling your name from the dark. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Scary Dark Narrations for more real horror stories that will keep your headlights burning through the night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness of the open road calls out to you. The wind scraped across my windshield like sandpaper against bone. I'd been on the road for 16 straight hours, hauling freight from Denver to Seattle, chasing deadlines and fighting exhaustion. My name's Dave Morrison, 23 years behind the wheel of a Kenworth. I thought I'd seen it all until that night on Interstate 15 through the Montana Mountain Pass. The snow came down in sheets so thick it felt like driving through static. My headlights barely reached 10 feet ahead, and the canyon's black mouth yawned beside me with every curve. It was just after 2 in the morning when my CB radio crackled to life. The voice was low, smooth and hollow, like it was echoing out of a tunnel. Eastbound Kenworth. This is Mountain Guardian. You're about to hit black ice around mile marker 247. Better slow her down. I grabbed the mic, heart thudding in my chest. Appreciate that, Mountain Guardian. This is Big Dave in the blue Kenworth. No hesitation. Been watching you struggle back there for a while. Road gets real nasty ahead. Might want to take the next exit and wait it out. Something about his tone made my stomach tighten. Calm to calm, like he'd been expecting me. Still, I eased my foot off the gas. Moments later, my rig hit a patch of ice so slick, it shimmered under the headlights like glass. Had I not slowed, I'd have gone over the rail into the black, nothing below. Damn, I muttered, breathing hard. You just saved my life, Guardian. Been driving these roads longer than you've been alive, son, he replied, voice fuzzing through the static. Know every dangerous curve and every blind corner. He wasn't wrong again. A few miles later, he warned me about construction at mile marker 251, said the right lane was blocked off, no proper signage. Sure enough, there it was. Heavy equipment left out like rusted skeletons in the snow. I stayed left, heart pounding as I rolled past a bulldozer sitting dead center of the lane. We talked for hours after that. He knew where the winds would whip hardest, where rock slides like to play games with passing trucks, even where the snowplows left ruts deep enough to catch a tire. He told stories about driving these same mountains back in the 70s, before GPS, before smartphones, before the guardrails were replaced. Lost a lot of good men up here, he said quietly. Road used to take what it wanted. You learned respect or you didn't come back. There was something personal in his voice then. Something that tugged at a memory I didn't recognize. The longer we talked, the clearer his words became. Like the static was fading away the deeper I drove into the storm. Then he said something that made my blood freeze colder than the wind outside. You've got a picture of your daughter taped to the dashboard, don't you? Yellow dress, graduation day. My hands tightened around the wheel. How the hell do you know that? He chuckled softly, almost kindly. You're proud of her, can hear it in your voice. My heart was hammering. That picture was there, Sarah, smiling in that yellow dress she loved so much. But no one could see it from the radio. No one. Guardian, where exactly are you? I asked, voice shaking. Same place I've always been, Big Dave. Mile marker 238. Static buzzed, the signal warping. Storm like this one took me too. My mouth went dry. Took you. He continued, words slower now, like dragged through snow. February 15th, 1981. Lost control on the curve. Went through the guardrail. Never made it out. I stared at the glowing dashboard clock. February 15th, 2024. 43 years to the day. My grip loosened on the wheel. My chest felt hollow. "Who are you?" I whispered. The radio hissed, and for a moment, I thought I heard the distant groan of twisting metal, a semi-S horn fading into the wind. "It's been watching you for a long time, Dave." His voice was barely a whisper now, "keeping you safe. You've got my name, after all." I glanced at the nameplate above the dash, Morrison Hall & Co. "Mountain Guardian," I breathed. "What's your real name?" Silence. Then, one final transmission, so faint, it was almost lost in the static. "Jake. Jake Morrison." The radio died. Only the storm remained. Then, silence swallowed everything. The storm calmed by dawn, but the silence felt wrong, heavy, like something was still out there, waiting. I drove in a daze until the next truck stop, engine humming like a lullaby for the damned. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and diesel fumes. I asked the clerk if she'd ever heard of someone called Mountain Guardian. She froze, her expression flickering between confusion and fear. "You mean Jake?" she said softly. "Old trucker who went off the mountain back in '81? Hey, people still hear him sometimes on the CB during bad storms." I laughed nervously, but it came out cracked. "That's not funny." She just looked at me, so it wasn't meant to be. I went back to my rig, but the air inside felt different, colder, denser. The photo of Sarah was tilted now, like someone had brushed past it. My logbook was open on the passenger seat, pages fluttering even though the windows were sealed. I shut it quickly and turned the key. The radio clicked on by itself, channel 19 already tuned in. Static, then faintly. "Big Dave, you copy?" My breath hitched. "Jake." The voice didn't answer, but through the white noise came another sound, chains clinking, tires grinding against ice, a faint distant horn. Where the rest of the drive, the CB stayed alive. No voice now, just breathing, faint and rhythmic. Sometimes I could swear it matched mine. I kept telling myself it was the wind slipping through the antenna, but deep down I knew better. Weeks passed before I could bring myself to take that route again. The snow had long melted, but the memory clung to the road like frostbite. As I neared mile marker 238, the steering wheel began to tremble, not from the wind, but something deeper, like the ground itself was humming. I slowed down. Headlights caught the twisted remains of an old guardrail half buried in the dirt. A faded cross leaned beside it, the name Jake Morrison still visible beneath years of grime. I cut the engine. The night went still. My breath fogged in the air, even though it wasn't cold enough for that. I whispered, "Uncle Jake." That's when the CB sputtered back to life. "Still driving strong, Big Dave?" The voice was lighter now, almost content. "Road's safer these days. Guess I can finally rest." Static surged, then quiet. I thought it was over. But as I started the engine, something glinted in the snow near the memorial. A small metal tag, rusted and cracked. I stepped out, crunching over the ice, and picked it up. Stamped on it were the words, "Property of Morrison Hall & Co." It matched the exact tag bolted to my own truck's dash. When I looked up, headlights flickered in the distance, a semi crawling through the dark, no driver visible inside. Its lights passed over me, and for just a second, I saw a figure in the cab, hand on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead, face pale and still. Then it was gone, swallowed by the fog that hadn't been there a moment before. I climbed back into my cab, shivering, though the heater roared. The CB hummed softly, a familiar voice whispering through the static. "Keep it steady through the pass, son." My reflection in the windshield blinked, but I didn't. The sound faded, leaving only the hum of the road beneath my tires. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept driving, mile after endless mile, until dawn broke again. Sometimes I still hear him faint, guiding, like the road itself is speaking. Maybe he's still watching out for me. Or maybe, one of these nights, I'll answer that call. It's not to be the one driving anymore. Would you dare return to that mountain pass?
Look behind you. They're waiting.
I'd been hauling cargo across the western states for 12 years. But that night on Highway 50, The loneliest road in America felt like my first real taste of fear. The desert stretched endlessly, a black ocean of sagebrush and silence. My headlights carved tunnels through the void as I pushed through the early September darkness. Chasing a delivery deadline to Reno, the hum of the tires had become hypnotic when I first noticed it, the faint glow of headlights in my passenger side mirror, pacing me exactly a quarter-mile back. At first, I thought it was another trucker running the same route. Happens all the time out here to rigs, finding comfort in company. But an hour later, that comfort started to rot into unease. The lights behind me never gained, never fell back. No matter how I adjusted my speed, they stayed locked, like a reflection I couldn't shake. I slowed from 70 to 65. The lights slowed too. I punched it to 75. They surged forward just enough to hold the same distance. The rhythm was too perfect. It's too precise. Something cold crawled up my spine. I tapped the brakes hard, watching the mirror. The glow behind me dimmed instantly, breaking in sync. Only when I looked over my shoulder directly through the rear window, there was nothing, just asphalt stretching forever. But the moment my eyes flicked back to the mirror, the truck was there again. Same shape, same build, same glow of running lights. I frowned and leaned closer to the mirror. My stomach turned. The truck behind me wasn't just following, it was identical. Blue Peterbilt cab, white trailer, same company logos on the sides. It was my truck, trailing me like some ghostly twin. I grabbed the CB mic. Eastbound Peterbilt, this is the Blue Pete, a quarter-mile ahead, come back, static. I tried again, on another channel. Then another. Nothing but the low hiss of desert silence. The longer I watched that mirror, the more wrong everything felt. Around mile marker 127, I decided to end the game. I flicked my signal and pulled into a small rest area. Nothing but cracked pavement and a flickering lamppost. In the mirror, the other truck did the same, mimicking every move, every turn of my wheel. My chest tightened as I shifted into park. When I opened the door, desert air, rushed and dry, cold, empty. The parking lot was completely still. My truck sat alone beneath the flickering light. No engines, no other headlights. Just the sigh of the wind scraping across the asphalt. I walked around my rig twice, boots crunching the gravel, searching for any sign of another vehicle. Nothing. But when I climbed back into the cab and looked at the mirrors again, the reflection truck was right there, parked directly behind me. Engine idling, exhaust rising in ghostly plumes, running lights glowing like eyes in the dark. I stared out the back window, only to see empty space again. My pulse pounded in my ears. I muttered, No, that's not possible. I fired the engine and pulled back onto the highway. The moment I hit the open road, the reflection truck reappeared in my mirrors, pacing me once more. Always that perfect quarter-mile gap, always mirroring. For hours passed like a fever dream. Every curve, every hill, it stayed locked behind me. Whenever I blinked or looked away, I half hoped it would vanish, but every time I checked the mirrors, it was there. Just before dawn, fatigue blurred the edges of my vision. My thoughts drifted, my hands trembling on the wheel. To stay awake, I started talking to the mirror truck like it was real. You holding up back there, buddy? Long night, huh? Then God help Mitt waved. A hand lifted in the mirror. The driver wore the same cap as me, the same shirt, the same everything. My heart stopped, and then silence swallowed everything. When I came to, the sky had turned a soft, ghostly gray. My eyes burned from exhaustion, and for a moment, I thought I'd imagined everything. But then the mirror lights flickered back to life, just a dim outline, still keeping pace behind me. My voice cracked when I spoke. You still there? The lights blinked once, almost like an answer. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. The desert around me was waking coyotes yipping somewhere far off. The first streaks of dawn cutting across the horizon. I told myself it was a trick of fatigue, of reflection, of desert isolation. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The truck wasn't behind me. It was in the mirrors, trapped there like a copy of me, caught between glass and reality. Every time I tried to look directly, it vanished, leaving the endless highway bare. I reached for my phone to record it, proof that I was indeed losing my mind, but the screen stayed black, refusing to turn on. My dashboard clock froze at 4:17 a.m. The radio fizzed with static, whispering beneath it a faint voice repeating my own words. "You getting tired back there, buddy?" My blood ran cold. The air inside the cab thickened, heavy and dry. The temperature gauge started to climb, though the desert morning was freezing. I rolled down the window, and the sound of the wind came through distorted, reversed as if time had bent backward. Up ahead, a road sign appeared through the haze. Asterisk Reno, 73 miles. Asterisk, but the letters shimmered, flickering between that and something else. Return. I slammed the brakes. The mirror truck stopped too. Only this time, it didn't wait. It began to move forward, toward me. My mirrors trembled with the vibration of its engine. The headlights grew larger, brighter, until the whole cab was filled with blinding white. I threw the gear into drive and hit the gas. The two trucks raced down the highway, me in the world of dust and heat, it in the silvery plane of reflection. It followed every move, every shift of the wheel. But something was changing. The horizon seemed to ripple. The world behind me, the mirrored one, started to twist, bending like melted glass. Then, for the first time, it broke pattern. The reflection truck swerved left when I turned right. My mirrors cracked thin, fractures crawling across the glass like spiderwebs. I screamed and punched the windshield, desperate to break whatever spell had me trapped. Through the shattered mirror, I saw the other me, the driver of that phantom truck, smiling. It's not a tired smile. Not mine. Something stretched and wrong, like it knew something I didn't. And then, the light devoured everything. When I opened my eyes again, I was parked on the shoulder, engine idling. The morning sun was high, burning across the sand. My mirrors were intact, clean, empty. No other trucks in sight. My radio clock read 3 a.m., the same time I'd started my drive hours ago. My logbook was blank, like the night had never happened. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep without a light on. I told myself it was exhaustion, that my brain had invented a phantom to keep me awake. But last month, while fueling in Ely, another driver came over. Older guy, deep lines under his eyes. He asked what route I ran. When I told him Highway 50, he just went pale. "You ever see your own rig in the mirror out there?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. His hands were shaking. He said it followed him too, same distance. Same timing, same wave. Only his reflection didn't fade at sunrise. Pulled ahead. He saw himself drive off into the distance and disappear. Now, whenever I pass through Nevada, I keep my mirrors tilted away, just enough so I can't see the road behind me. But sometimes out of habit, I glance anyway just for a second, and every once in a while I catch a flash of blue and white in the corner of my eye. A reflection, waiting for me to look too long. Would you dare return to that road? The sound started like a low growl beneath the hood, a deep grinding that seemed to echo through the entire cab. I'd been driving for nearly 12 hours straight, the Kentucky hills rolling endlessly beneath my headlights, when my temperature gauge began to creep toward red. The smell of burning oil filled the air, thick and metallic, clinging to my throat. I'd been behind schedule all day, but at that moment, I wasn't thinking about deadlines. I was thinking about survival. Out here, on a back road swallowed by fog and farmland, the nearest sign of life was miles away. My GPS was glitching, flickering between signal and static, but I caught a glimpse of something, a rusted road sign leaning at an odd angle. Mueller's garage. All repairs to Miles. The name caught my attention for half a second. Mueller, same as mine. I laughed under my breath. Guess I've got family in the middle of nowhere, I muttered, trying to shake the unease crawling up my neck. But the laughter died as the grinding worsened. I could feel it now, like something alive was chewing through metal beneath my feet. I turned down the narrow side road, gravel crunching under my tires. The trees leaned close on either side, branches whispering across my mirrors. 2 miles stretched endlessly, darkness thickening around me. Just as I began to think the sign had been a cruel joke, my headlights caught a building ahead, a squat concrete structure with a single bay and a flickering fluorescent sign. Mueller's garage. The letters glowed weakly through the fog. An old man stepped out before I'd even cut the engine. He wore clean gray coveralls, and a faded baseball cap. His movements were steady, precise, the kind of confidence that comes from doing the same work for a lifetime. When he smiled, deep lines framed his mouth. "Evenin', Frank," he said, voice calm and familiar. "Looks like you've got trouble." Hearing my name from his mouth froze me for a moment. I hadn't told him. Maybe he'd seen it stenciled on the side of my cab, Frank Mueller Trucking. Still, the way he said it sent a chill through me. "Yeah," I replied, stepping down. "Engines running hot, grinding sound I can't pin down." He nodded slowly, eyes studying my truck like a surgeon assessing a patient. "Water pump and gasket, if I had to guess." I blinked. "That's exactly what I thought." He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth barely moving. "Let's get you fixed up." Inside the garage, everything gleamed, but not like a modern shop. The tools were decades old, their chrome handles polished from years of use. A radio sat on a dusty shelf, playing faint country static that never quite resolved into a song. I noticed the calendar on the wall, minus 1978. The pages were yellowed but pristine, as if time had stopped halfway through the year. Frank, the old man, worked without hesitation. His hands moved with mechanical certainty, twisting bolts and swapping parts in silence except for the rhythmic sound of the wrench. I stood nearby, watching as steam rose from the open engine, the light from the hanging bulb throwing long shadows that stretched too far along the floor. He talked while he worked, voice low and steady. Stories about the road, about truckers who'd broken down in these same hills. "Been at this a long time," he said. 43 years come April. Helped a lot of fellas like you get back on their way. That's what keeps the world turning, isn't it? Helping each other out?" When he finished, the engine purred, smooth and perfect. "Better than before. You're good to go," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "No charge. Just pass it along next time someone needs help." I reached for my wallet anyway. "At least let me pay you something." He shook his head, smiling again. "I've got everything I need right here." As I turned to leave, I glanced back at him, the old mechanic standing beneath the dim bulb, his face half in shadow. The air around him shimmered slightly, like heat rising off asphalt. I blinked and it was gone. I climbed into my cab, the smell of oil replaced by something faintly sweet like burnt wood. When I started the engine, it hummed flawlessly. I looked back one last time. Frank was still standing there, one hand raised in a silent wave. The fluorescent sign above him buzzed softly, then flickered out completely. Then, silence swallowed everything. When I reached Nashville that night, I felt lighter, almost euphoric. The engine ran smoother than it had in months, and my delivery went off without a hitch. I filled out my logbook at a diner off the highway, replaying the encounter in my head. That name, Mueller's garage. The identical first name, the tools, the calendar. It all seemed strange, but exhaustion smoothed out the edges of my doubt. The next morning, the strangeness caught up with me. My dispatcher wanted receipts for the repairs. I reached into my glove box. Nothing. No invoice, no card, no trace of the work done. I tried calling the number on my GPS history, but there was none listed. The route log only showed a blank space where that turnoff had been. Like it never existed. Curiosity turned into something colder, an unease I couldn't explain. So, 2 weeks later, on my way through Kentucky again, I detoured down that same back road. The sign was gone. I drove slower, heart thudding as I reached the spot where the garage had stood. The gravel was still there, but the building, every brick, every trace, had vanished. Only an empty field stretched out beneath the gray sky. Not even a foundation remained. It was as though the earth had swallowed it whole. At a gas station nearby, I asked the clerk about Mueller's garage. His expression changed immediately. "You mean Frank Mueller's place?" he said softly. "That burned down in '81. Old man died in the fire trying to save his shop. Shame, really. He helped a lot of truckers." I stared at him. What did he look like? Gray coveralls, baseball cap. Always smiling, the clerk said. "Why?" I didn't answer. My mind went blank as the realization sank in. The Frank I met, the man who fixed my truck, had been dead for over 40 years. I drove back to the empty field that evening, parking where the bay door should have been. The air felt colder there, unnaturally still. The wind brushed through the weeds with a faint hiss, like whispers carried just beyond hearing. I left my truck idling and stepped out. The smell of burnt oil mixed with something faintly charred, like old smoke. My headlights caught movement in the distance, a faint glimmer of metal, half buried in dirt. It was a wrench, spotless despite the rusted soil. I picked it up, and as I did, my radio crackled, static at first, and a voice calm, familiar, keep her running smooth. Frank, I froze. My CB was off. The light from my truck flickered. For a moment I saw him standing where the garage used to be. Same smile, same cap. He lifted his hand again in that same silent wave, then faded into the darkness. The next thing I knew, I was sitting back in the cab, the engine still idling, headlights cutting across the empty field. The wrench lay on the seat beside me, cold as ice. Since that night, I've heard other drivers on the radio talk about strange encounters, mechanics appearing out of nowhere, fixing impossible problems, then vanishing without a trace. Every time I hear their stories, I stay quiet. I already know the truth. Sometimes, late on long hauls, when fatigue creeps in and the road hums beneath my wheels, I'll catch a flicker of light in my mirror, a shape by the roadside. A man waving once, then gone. I help other drivers when I can now. Maybe that's what he meant. Maybe every time I pull over for someone stranded, I'm keeping his promise alive. But there's one thing I can't explain. My truck still runs like new, not a single issue since that day. And every now and then, when I pass through Kentucky, I glance at the fogged hills and wonder, would you dare return to that empty road? I've spent 28 years behind the wheel of a truck, enough time to memorize the pulse of the highway, the low hum of diesel engines, the rhythmic flash of lane markers, the lonely symphony of static-filled CB chatter. But nothing in those decades prepared me for my final delivery, the one that broke reality wide open. It started, as most strange things do, with something that seemed ordinary, a Friday afternoon rush order. The dispatcher's voice came through my headset, too calm, too deliberate. "Michael, I've got something special for you. Urgent run to Detroit. Needs to arrive Monday morning. Triple pay. Triple." I remember staring at the logbook, feeling that word thrum in my chest like a promise I shouldn't trust. I agreed before I could think twice. The pickup location was a warehouse I didn't recognize, odd, considering I'd run every inch of the industrial district 1,000 times.
We're at...
The building didn't fit its surroundings. The brickwork was older, darker, almost weathered by centuries instead of decades. The loading crew barely spoke, moving in perfect synchronization. The cargo was sealed in the trailer with locks I'd never seen before, matte black with no visible keyholes. When they handed me the paperwork, the texture caught me off guard. Too smooth, too dense, as if made from pressed silk instead of paper. The destination was printed in flawless ink. Asterisk 1247 Industrial Boulevard, Suite 255, Detroit asterisk. I could have sworn the address shimmered under the light, like heat rising off asphalt. By the time I hit the highway, the world felt normal again. Tennessee sunlight slicing through my windshield. Country radio humming low, caffeine bitter on my tongue. Routine, safe. I fueled up outside Bowling Green. Chatted with a few other drivers about fuel prices, weather fronts, traffic. No one mentioned Detroit, and I didn't bring it up. The air had that heavy, expectant stillness that comes before a storm, though the sky remained perfectly clear. Past midnight, somewhere near Cincinnati, the GPS began to act up. It showed me driving on I-75, but the road signs clearly said I-71. When I recalculated, the device flickered, then updated the map to match what I saw, though the route ahead still led to Detroit, still promised an 8 o'clock a.m. delivery. I told myself it was a software glitch. But the farther north I went, the less sense anything made. City signs passed that I'd never seen before. Millbrook Junction, Riverside Industrial, New Canton. The landscapes were familiar, but wrong, like someone had rearranged the world in subtle ways. Even the moon looked misplaced, hanging too low, its edges too sharp. I tried to call dispatch, but my phone was dead. No signal bars, no data, nothing but a black screen reflecting my own worried face. Around midnight, I pulled into a truck stop for fuel. It looked normal enough. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, pumps hissing, the smell of burnt coffee and diesel in the air. Inside, the cashier smiled like everything was fine, but when she handed back my change, I froze. The bills were the right color, the right shape, but the serial numbers ran backward, and the date on one said 2008. I laughed nervously and asked if she'd seen that before. She didn't even blink. All the time, hun? The diner next door was full of drivers. Conversations buzzed around me. Freight rates, icy bridges, road closures. But every so often, CB crackled nearby with static-laced reports. Accident on Highway 52 near Blakemont City. There's no Blakemont City in Ohio, or anywhere I've ever been. When I left the stop, the night felt heavier. The silence, thick like damp cloth, pressed over my ears. The GPS insisted I was only a few hours from Detroit, so I drove, through towns with too many streetlights, past forests that leaned too close to the road. The radio drifted between stations that played nothing but faint whispers and the hiss of wind. As dawn bled into the horizon, I reached Detroit, or something wearing its skin. The skyline was wrong, buildings too tall, others missing entirely. The air smelled sterile, almost metallic. My GPS pinged, guiding me into a vast manufacturing complex, exactly matching my manifest. Suite 255 waited behind a sliding steel door that opened before I even stopped the truck. The receiving crew was ready, efficient, silent. They unloaded the cargo without question, checked off forms I didn't remember signing, and handed me an envelope. The money was there, same strange bills as before. The supervisor, a tall man with pale eyes, said quietly, "Thanks for the reliable service, Mr. Torres. We'll call you again when we need transport to this timeline." That word, timeline, lodged in my mind like a splinter. I asked him what he meant. He just smiled and pointed toward the lot. "Your GPS will take you home." I turned, one foot already on the truck step, and then silence swallowed everything. The world folded around me like a collapsing map. One second I was leaving the Detroit facility. The next, my rig was parked outside a truck stop in Kentucky, same as the one I defueled at days before. The engine idled, humming like it had never been turned off. My watch read the same time as when I'd first arrived at that strange warehouse. I checked my logbook. It showed the full delivery completed 847 miles one way, but no return trip recorded at all. The envelope sat on the passenger seat. I hesitated before opening it. The cash inside had changed regular US currency now, but counted out to the exact amount promised, plus the bonus. The only proof of anything wrong was the faint metallic scent clinging to my hands. For days, I tried convincing myself it had been a hallucination, exhaustion, maybe carbon monoxide, but the details clung to me like oil I couldn't wash off. The paper from the manifest felt different, softer, like it breathed under my fingertips. And the word timeline kept echoing in my head every time I tried to sleep. A week later, I drove to the pickup address listed on the manifest. It led me to an empty lot surrounded by chain link fence and weeds taller than my knees. The sign at the gate had rusted clean through, letters unreadable. When I checked online, that address had been vacant for at least 15 years. Then I looked up the delivery site, -1247 Industrial Boulevard, Detroit. It existed, but the photos showed a small office building with no loading docks, no warehouses, no Suite 255. I even drove there again. The receptionist looked at me like I was insane when I asked about deliveries. "We don't have suites," she said. "This building only has one floor." That night, I went through my cab. The GPS log still recorded my northbound trip, but stopped dead at the delivery point. When I checked the return route, it showed nothing, just a flat line stretching endlessly east, then looping back into itself, like I'd driven off the edge of the map. The bills I'd kept as souvenirs began to change. Their texture softened, then crumbled into dust that smelled faintly like ozone and rain. The manifest dissolved the same way. Letters fading first, then paper flaking apart until only powder remained. One morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. When I answered, the line hissed, and a voice faint, distant whispered, "Next pickup, confirmed." The call dropped before I could respond. My stomach turned cold. Since then, Strange things keep happening on the road. I'll see towns on my GPS that don't exist anywhere else. Billboards advertising companies I've never heard of. Once, outside Dayton, I passed a truck identical to mine, same license plate, same cargo seal, heading in the opposite direction. The driver looked exactly like me. He didn't glance over. He didn't have to. I knew what he was hauling. Sometimes, when I drive late at night, I catch glimpses of roads that shouldn't be there, interstates with unfamiliar numbers, exits marked with names that vanish when I look back. The air around those places feels thin, like the world's fabric stretches tighter there. I've learned not to follow them, though my GPS still tries to redirect me toward those phantom routes. Every so often, I'll pass another trucker at a rest stop and catch that same distant look in their eyes, the kind that says they've seen something they can explain, something they can't forget. We never talk about it. We just nod, share a quiet understanding, and move on. Maybe there are other drivers out there hauling freight between versions of reality, carrying cargo meant for places that barely exist. Maybe that's why some rigs vanish without a trace, their routes scrubbed from every record. I keep my radio tuned low these days. Sometimes I hear a voice through the static, calm, measured, familiar. It says my name, then it gives me an address I've never seen. And for a moment, I want to answer. Would you dare deliver to a place that exists just slightly to the left of reality? The wind scraped across my windshield like skeletal fingers as I pushed my rig east through the frozen Wyoming night. The radio hissed with static, and my headlights cut through a shifting curtain of snow. After 31 years on the road, I'd learned to recognize the rhythm of every route, the endless hum of tires, the neon oases that promised coffee and diesel, the truck stops that never changed, no matter how many years passed. But that night, the road felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Like the world had slipped into a breath it didn't intend to take. My name's James Crawford. I've seen the country evolve through asphalt and time, highways built, truck stops closed, familiar faces come and go. But the Riverside Truck Plaza, the place taught me something the road never should have. That sometimes when the night gets deep enough, you can drive right out of your own time. It was late January, wind chill below zero, and I'd been hauling a load of electronics from Salt Lake City to Omaha. My fuel gauge blinked its warning light. I was running low. Riverside was the next stop, and I'd been there dozens of times. A reliable joint, good burgers, working showers, familiar faces. When I saw its neon glow rise out of the darkness, I actually felt relief. But the second my headlights swept across the parking lot, something twisted in my gut. The trucks parked there looked different, sleeker, more aerodynamic. Their trailers bore logos I'd never seen, strange geometric symbols, sharp and unfamiliar. And their license plates, they glowed faintly under the light, in patterns that didn't match any state I knew. I told myself it was fatigue, hallucinations from too many hours behind the wheel. Still, I pulled up to the fuel island and stepped into the bitter wind. The pumps looked new, brand new gleaming chrome and glass with digital displays that pulsed softly like heartbeat monitors. As I filled my tank, the readouts showed not just gallons and price, but something else. Energy calibration, syncing. I'd never seen that before. Inside, the warmth hit me like a wave. But the place wasn't the same. The layout had changed. The old diner booths were replaced by smooth metallic surfaces. The fluorescent lights were softer, warmer, yet somehow artificial. The employees wore dark gray uniforms with a logo that looked like the old Riverside emblem, only it had been subtly redesigned, as if through decades of branding evolution. The cashier smiled, but there was something distant about her eyes, like she was watching me from behind glass. I paid for the fuel, and when I asked half-jokingly, "When did you guys remodel?" she blinked in confusion. "Remodel? You haven't changed a thing." Her words crawled under my skin. I ordered coffee and a sandwich, trying to shake it off. But even the menu was wrong. The items were the same, but the currency symbols beside the prices weren't dollars. There was something else, something close but alien. Around me, truckers were talking. Their voices familiar, the cadence, the slang, but the words weren't. They mentioned cities I'd never heard of, highways with numbers that didn't exist, and delivery tech that sounded like science fiction. One man grumbled about navigation grid interference. Another talked about biometric cargo verification. I forced myself to listen, hoping for something familiar. But the more I heard, the more I realized I didn't belong there. I took my coffee to go and stepped outside, desperate for the comfort of my own rig. That's when I saw it, a receipt tucked under my wiper blade. I picked it up and froze. The logo read, Riverside Transtemporal Plaza *. The date, February 15th, 2031, 7 years into the future. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The air around me felt thick, humming faintly like the world was vibrating at a frequency I wasn't supposed to feel. I climbed into my truck, hands shaking, and checked my watch. 2024. My phone. 2024. The truck's internal clock. Same. Only that damn receipt refused to agree. I started the engine and eased back onto Interstate 80, but as the highway stretched ahead, even that had changed. The asphalt shimmered with embedded lights that pulsed softly beneath the snow. Signs glowed with languages I didn't recognize. The air itself felt charged, alive. I tried to call dispatch, but the satellite connection failed. A message blinked. Protocol outdated. Connection terminated. The cab filled with static. My GPS flickered, displaying new icons and impossible data. Weather interference probability, 14% autonomous convoy nearby. Then, silence swallowed everything. The road ahead looked like mine, yet completely alien, a ghost wearing a familiar face. Every mile I drove, the world seemed to lean further into the impossible. Rest areas gleamed with blue-white light. Distant trucks hummed without engine noise, their headlights glowing like eyes that never blinked. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The hum of my diesel engine was the only thing anchoring me to reality. Then, through the static, my CB crackled. A voice came through. Southbound driver, you're off pattern. Identify. The voice wasn't mechanical, but there was a clipped precision to it, like an automated dispatcher, pretending to sound human. I froze, staring at the receiver. Who is this? I asked. No reply. Just faint laughter echoing, distorted. The laughter wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was outside. My mirrors flickered, reflections warping. For a second, I saw myself in the driver's seat of another truck, identical to mine, moving parallel to me on the empty highway. Same rig, same face, only older. His eyes met mine through the glass, tired, hollow, then nothing. The mirror cleared. Drove faster, desperate to find something real. That's when I spotted the glowing sign ahead. Golden Eagle Travel Center to Miles. My chest tightened with hope. A place I knew, a piece of normal. The exit ramp was steep, and as my wheels hit the old cracked pavement, everything snapped. The humming stopped, the lights dimmed. The air grew heavy again, real, solid, familiar. When I parked and stepped out, the trucks around me were old models. Rusted fenders, mud-caked tires, it's everything back where it belonged. Inside, the Golden Eagle looked exactly as it always had. Flickering neon, greasy counters, stale coffee. The cashier raised an eyebrow as I handed him my receipt.
"Ah," he muttered, turning it in his hands. "Never seen one like this."
Format's all wrong. I leaned closer. The date now read correctly, 2024, but under the Riverside name, faintly embossed like a watermark, was still the phrase *Transtemporal Plaza*. I drove to Omaha the next day, the road stretching ahead like nothing had happened. The hum of my tires sounded different now, quieter, listening. Weeks later, I researched the Riverside Truck Plaza and found plans for a full renovation in 2027. The renderings matched exactly what I'd seen. The new pumps, the digital menu boards, even the uniform redesign. Every detail was there. Since then, I've stopped at Riverside many times, always during daylight. It's always double-checking my watch before stepping inside. The building is still old, with cracked tiles and flickering signs. But sometimes when I walk through the doors, I catch the faint scent of ozone, like burnt air after lightning. And when I pay for fuel, I swear the cashier's smile looks too polished, like she's practiced it across versions of herself I haven't met yet. Maybe the highways don't just connect towns and states. Maybe they cut through time itself, thin lines between years, between possibilities. Maybe every trucker who's ever vanished out here didn't crash. Maybe they just kept driving into a version of the road that hasn't been built yet. I kept that receipt for months, until it crumbled to dust, literally disintegrated, as if it was never meant to exist in this year. But I still dream of that night sometimes. I see the futuristic trucks, the glowing roads, the reflection of my older self staring back at me. And every time I pass through that stretch of Wyoming, I can feel it, that hum in the air, faint and steady, like a frequency waiting for me to tune in again. Would you dare stop there? If the next fuel pump might be 7 years ahead?
All units, prioritize evacuation. The breach is accelerating. They are inside. Echoes in the dark.
The hum of my rig has always been a comfort, steady, predictable, like the pulse of a living thing keeping me company through the long miles of night. But the night everything changed. Even the engine felt different. It vibrated deeper, like it was aware of something I wasn't. My name's Marcus Thompson, 19 years behind the wheel. From the cracked docks of Boston to the humid backroads of Georgia, I'd seen it all, or thought I had. But last spring, when work got slow, I made a mistake that still keeps me awake long after the roads have gone silent. That was when I started taking loads from a company called Nightline Logistics. Their pitch was perfect. High-paying, overnight runs, clean paperwork, fast delivery times. My dispatcher was a woman named Helen Morrison. Her voice raspy from cigarettes but strangely warm filled the cab like an old radio host you'd grown up listening to. She remembered everything. My truck's fuel range, my wife's name, even my daughter's birthday. And when you spend your life alone in a box of steel and glass, driving through endless dark, that kind of familiarity can feel comforting. For months, everything went smoothly. Every load arrived on time. Every route Helen gave me was flawless. No way station hassles, no wrong turns. It was like she could see the roads before I did. Sometimes I joked that she must have her own satellite in the sky. She'd just laugh softly and say, "Good dispatchers always know what's coming." But the odd thing was, I could only ever reach her between midnight and dawn. Daytime calls went to voicemail. Company number always said, "Office temporarily unavailable." I once asked her why, and she explained that Nightline had separate operations for day and night crews. I accepted that until one night in early June, when her directions started feeling too perfect. Around 2 a.m., Helen called about an urgent medical shipment Richmond to Charlotte. Immediate pickup, premium pay. Her tone had that familiar, calm urgency that made me trust her completely. I drove through the misty Virginia back roads, headlights slicing the fog into ribbons, her voice guiding me through each turn, like she was right there in the passenger seat. Halfway through the trip, around 4:30, she warned me about a multi-car pileup on I-85 near Durham. "I'll get you around it," she said. "Take Highway 751, then cut through Apex. You'll make up 2 hours easy." And she was right. The route was wide open, no cops, no detours, nothing. I hit Charlotte just as the sun started bleeding over the horizon. But when I checked the news later that morning, there was no mention of an accident, no photos, no traffic delays. Even the dot logs showed nothing unusual. I brushed it off as a reporting delay. But something about the way Helen had said, "I'll get you around it," echoed in my head. It's like she wasn't talking about traffic. It's like she was moving me around something else entirely. After that night, her warnings became more frequent and more impossible. She'd alert me about storms that never appeared, construction zones that didn't exist, and detours through towns that I swear weren't on any map. Yet every route she gave led me to my destination on time. It was flawless navigation through unreality. Then came early July. Helen called with a new run Norfolk to Jacksonville. Standard freight, nothing special. But during that call, she casually mentioned something about a conversation we'd had the previous Tuesday. A conversation that never happened. I'd been home that week, dealing with a family emergency. I hadn't taken a single job. When I corrected her, there was a long pause on the line. Then she laughed it off. "These night shifts blend together sometimes, Marcus." But after that, she kept referencing events that didn't exist. Deliveries I'd never made, customers I'd never met. She'd talk about weather conditions in places I'd never been. Each time, her confidence made me question my own memory. Was I forgetting things? Missing time? Or was Helen confusing me with another driver? By late July, it felt like she wasn't dispatching me anymore. She was dispatching versions of me. Alternate trips, alternate deliveries, alternate timelines. That night, she called with what she called a continuation load, supposedly. I'd delivered 17 pallets of industrial equipment the week before, and now the client needed them redirected. She recited every detail: pickup location, customer name, timestamp, even the signature of a woman named Janet Walsh. But I'd been home celebrating my daughter's birthday that day. I had receipts, photos, family witnesses. I told her that. Her voice changed. The warmth drained away, replaced by something metallic, mechanical. "Marcus," she said, "you transported 17 pallets from Phoenix Metalworks to Carolina Manufacturing on July 18th. Delivery completed at 14:30. Signed for by Janet Walsh. Payment processed." Her voice glitched mid-sentence like a corrupted file trying to correct itself. I remember gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, the line filled with static. Then silence. Then silence swallowed everything. When the call ended, I just sat there on the side of the road, the hum of my rig fading beneath the weight of that silence. My heart pounded, loud enough to drown out the night itself. I checked my logs. Nothing. No record. No missing entries. But Helen had described everything too perfectly for it to be random. The next few nights, I ignored her calls. But she didn't stop. Each voicemail sounded worse, distorted, fragmented, like her voice was being stretched through interference. "Marcus, your route, continuation, final manifest." Static would swallow the rest. By the second week of August, curiosity won over fear. I answered. "Marcus," she said, her voice flickering in and out. "Final assignment. Pick up at terminal." I asked which terminal. The line hissed, then she whispered. "The Nightline terminal." No address, no coordinates, just static. That phrase, the Nightline terminal, kept looping in my head for days. I searched online, checked databases, called dispatchers I knew across the coast. Nobody had ever heard of Nightline Logistics. Not one record. The bank deposits from their payments traced back to accounts that had been closed for years. One night around 3 a.m., I pulled into an abandoned way station off Route 301 to rest. The air was thick and wet, crickets chirping in a rhythm that didn't sound natural. When I turned off the ignition, the radio crackled to life by itself. "Marcus." Helen's voice bled through the static, warped and distant. "Manifest lists. Unresolved deliveries." Then came a series of coordinates, repeating over and over. My GPS couldn't recognize them, but curiosity, or maybe something deeper, pushed me to follow. The roads grew emptier the farther I drove. Town lights disappeared. The air felt heavier, denser, like the world itself was thinning out. When I finally reached the coordinates, I found a massive freight yard, no signage, no lights, no sound except the low hum of idling engines in the dark. Dozens of trucks were parked there, engines running, headlights off. Every cab looked identical, same color, same make, same license number. Mine. I killed my engine. The sound didn't fade because the others were still running. Slowly, I climbed out. The ground shimmered like heat haze, even though the night was cold. I walked past the first rig, and through the window I saw a man sitting behind the wheel. It was me, same face, same hat, same trembling hand, gripping the wheel. He turned his head slightly, eyes catching mine just long enough to confirm what I already knew. There were dozens of me, all staring forward, waiting for dispatch. My phone buzzed. Helen again. Her voice was almost gone now, buried under static. "Final delivery, Marcus. It's unresolved manifests. No return expected." I dropped the phone and ran. The air around me warped, headlights flickering on one by one, cutting through the dark in blinding synchrony. The rigs began to move slowly, like a synchronized convoy departing some invisible station. I jumped back into my truck, slammed the gear shift, and tore out of there. In my rear-view mirror, the freight yard dissolved into fog. But the road ahead didn't feel like any road I knew. The mile markers were wrong. The exits led nowhere. When dawn finally broke, I found myself merging onto I-85, exactly where Helen had first rerouted me months ago. Only this time, the signs were blank. Since that night, I've stopped working with any dispatcher I can't meet face to face. But sometimes, when the CB radio hisses with white noise around 3 a.m., I hear a familiar rasp. Marcus, got a load for you. And for a moment I feel the urge to answer, to follow the route, to see where that other version of me is going. Then I turn the radio off, keep driving toward the dawn. Would you dare return to this place? The hum of my diesel engine has always been a comfort, steady, deep, alive beneath me. But that night on Interstate 40, it sounded different, like something was breathing with it. I'd been driving for 24 years, coast to coast, every type of haul you could imagine. I knew the rules of the road, the unspoken code between truckers. Flash your lights to say hello, keep your distance. Watch each other's backs out there in the dark. But that night through the Texas Panhandle, something broke those rules, something that didn't belong on any map. I was westbound from Oklahoma City to Flagstaff, hauling furniture. It wasn't urgent freight, so I took my time. The clock read 11:58 p.m., that hour when the world feels hollow, and the horizon stretches farther than it should. Up ahead, I noticed a loose convoy of 6 trucks moving together, their lights slicing through the dark like a river of amber fire. I felt a strange relief seeing them. Nothing beats the comfort of company when you're pushing through the black miles alone. I eased in behind the last truck, a red Peterbilt hauling a flatbed. The driver noticed me and flashed his marker lights, answered back. Simple gesture, but it meant everything. Just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. For nearly an hour, we rolled together in perfect rhythm. Lane changes came like choreography. The lead truck signaled, the others followed in sync. The CB chatter was calm, professional. Convoy leader to all units, watch your spacing.
Waiters.
Merging at 212. Routine stuff. The kind of precision that only comes from veterans of the road. But then, I started noticing small things. The voices on the radio, they had this hollow quality, like they were echoing through metal tunnels. And not once did I see anyone pull off for fuel. That part didn't make sense. Every driver I knew had a rhythm, drive, refuel, stretch, coffee, repeat. But these trucks, they just kept going. Convoy leader to all units, a voice crackled. Construction ahead at mile marker 247. Single lane for 5 miles. Maintained spacing. The voice was calm, seasoned, but distant, like it came from somewhere else. When we reached the construction site, it was exactly as described, except everything about it was wrong. The machinery was old, sun-faded, and the warning signs looked decades out of date. The flaggers wore hard hats and neon vests, but the style, the cut, it was like something from the 70s. As we passed through, I glanced at the other trucks. That's when it hit me. Every one of them was vintage. A blue Kenworth with squared mirrors, a Mack with rounded fenders, an International with paint dulled by age. Trucks I'd seen in collector shows, not on active runs. But these weren't showpieces. They moved like they belonged there, working, coordinated, alive. "This is Big Jim in the blue Kenworth," one voice said through the CB. "Been running this stretch for 37 years. Never seen construction done this quick." I tried to respond, a joke back, but static swallowed my voice. When we cleared the zone and hit open highway again, I checked my mirrors. My stomach dropped. Entire construction area gone. No cones, no lights, no flaggers. Just clean asphalt, stretching endlessly behind us, like we'd driven through a memory. I told myself I was tired, hallucinating. Maybe the caffeine was wearing off. But my heart knew better. The road didn't feel real anymore, like I was drifting through some half-forgotten stretch of America that had slipped out of time. Then, just past 2 a.m., the lead truck spoke again. "All units, fuel stop ahead. Desert Rose Travel Center, exit 203. Standard 20-minute break." I felt relief wash over me. My tank was low, and I could use a refill. But when we reached the exit, there was nothing. No signs, no lights, no station. Just an empty ramp leading into black fields. Still one by one, the trucks peeled off and disappeared down the ramp, their taillights vanishing into the dark. I slowed down, watching in disbelief. A moment later, they were back. All 6, neatly reformed on the highway ahead of me. "Excellent fuel stop," the leader said cheerfully. "Clean facilities, Good coffee. Ready to roll? My blood ran cold. Hadn't seen them stop. Hadn't seen them refuel. There was no travel center. I grabbed my CB mic. Convoy leader, this is Lone Star. Can you confirm that stop? I didn't see static. Then silence. As dawn began hinting at the horizon, the highway ahead shimmered in pale blue light. The trucks glowed faintly, their edges soft, fading like they were being erased by the coming day. Thanks for running with us tonight, driver. Big Jim's voice echoed faintly. Ave travels. Remember, the road goes on forever even when the drivers don't. Then silence swallowed everything. I drove in that silence for what felt like hours, the sun rising slow and cold behind me. The road looked endless, smooth, flawless, like it had been newly paved overnight. My CB was dead quiet, no static, no voices, nothing. Just the hum of my engine and the whisper of tires over asphalt. I kept replaying it all in my mind. The vintage trucks, the vanished construction zone, that fuel stop that didn't exist. Logic tried to fight it, to find reason, but deep down, something inside me knew I'd crossed paths with something not entirely human. Then I saw it, a faint reflection in my side mirror. Headlights. 6 sets, perfectly spaced. I pressed harder on the gas, my pulse climbing. But the lights kept pace, steady and unwavering. I switched channels on the CB, hoping to reach anyone. Breaker 19, this is Lone Star westbound on I-40. Got anyone on the line? Crackle? Then copy that, Lone Star. You're running with the Eternal Convoy tonight. The voice wasn't a single one. It was many layered, overlapping men, women, young, old, all speaking through the same frequency. My chest tightened. You're part of the Brotherhood now, the voice said. We're lights on. Keep your wheels turning. The road around me began to change. The exit signs looked older, rusted. Billboards advertised places that hadn't existed in decades. The digital glow of my dash flickered, replaced by analog gauges, dials I hadn't seen since my early days driving. Even the air smelled different, like old diesel, hot asphalt, and dust from a forgotten time. Then my GPS went dark. The screen turned black, showing only static white lines crawling across it like veins. I slowed down, trying to pull to the shoulder, but the shoulder wasn't there. The road just kept going, narrow, endless. The convoy lights drew closer behind me, bright enough to reflect off my rearview mirror. Then a single phrase cut through the noise. Don't stop. My hands tightened on the wheel. I didn't remember touching the CB mic, but somehow I answered. What happens if I do? A long pause. Then Big Jim's voice again, soft this time. We'll find out what's waiting at the last mile marker. I swallowed hard. What's at the last mile marker? But all I heard was laughter, not cruel, just distant, fading like the static between stations. The next thing I knew, I was passing through a town I didn't recognize. No cars, no people, just old signs and boarded windows. One sign said, "Welcome to Desert Rose, fuel, food, fellowship." My stomach dropped. Desert Rose, the travel center that didn't exist. The convoy rolled ahead of me, their engines low and steady. They turned into the lot-cracked pavement, dust swirling in circles, and for a moment, I saw it alive. Lights bright, pumps running, people moving, truckers laughing at the counter, coffee steaming. Then it all flickered, like an old film reel. I blinked and it was gone. It's just empty concrete and the whisper of the wind. One by one, the trucks vanished too, fading into mist, dissolving with the morning light, until only the red Peterbilt remained. It idled for a second, then turned off its lights. A voice came through my CB one last time. You've still got miles left in you, driver. But when your run ends, we'll be waiting. Then silence. The world seemed to rush back at once. It's the highway modern again, GPS blinking, sun full in the sky. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just driven across 2 versions of America, one alive, one trapped in its own endless route. Even now, years later, I sometimes hear faint chatter on the CB late at night. Old call signs, dead voices, conversations from decades ago. And when the road goes dark and empty and I feel that ache of loneliness behind the wheel, I look to the horizon. Just in case I catch a glimpse of running lights in perfect formation, leading me home. Would you dare drive that stretch alone? And just when you think the darkness is faded, it waits for you on the open road. The highways may look empty, but every mile carries echoes of those who never made it home. If you're brave enough to keep the lights on a little longer, go watch Asterisk's 7 True Trucker Horror Stories on Haunted Appalachian Highways. Asterisk, that journey will take you deep into the fog-covered roads of the Appalachians, where headlights vanish, radios whisper names, and something unseen follows just beyond the rearview mirror. You'll find it waiting for you right here at the end of this video, if you dare to press play. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to Asterisk's Scary Dark Narrations. Asterisk, join us. I'd step into a world where every story is real, every scream has a name, and every night brings a new descent into the unknown. Hit that bell icon, because when the next tale calls your name, you'll want to be the first to hear it.